Good evening, and welcome to the Pauline Rest Press Agency podcast. Tonight, I have a treat for you, all the way from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Miss Candy Slaughter. Candy spent 30 years with the Family Court of Philadelphia, first in the juvenile division as a probation officer, and then a liaison between the court and probation department. She retired with the Domestic Relations Division as a hearing officer for child support. Candy has been my personal mentor for over 20 years, and I'm grateful and honored to have her on my show. Candy has literally traveled the entire world. She has visited all continents, just recently completing her world travels with visiting Antarctica, her final continent that completed her trek around the world. Retirement, however, hasn't slowed Candy down. She is now a practicing yogi, offering mindful meditation classes in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Her company's name is The Traveling Yogi. I brought Candy on today to share with us some tips on how to soothe our anxiety during this pandemic using mindful meditation techniques. Hey Candy, how are you?
I'm fine, Pauline, and yourself?
I am doing great. Thank you for asking. So Candy, let's jump right in.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So Candy, let's jump right in. I have a few questions for you. My first
Great.
question is, tell our listeners a little bit about your company, The Traveling Yogi, and what services do you provide?
Well, I want to first thank you for extending this opportunity to me to speak with your listeners. And, I'm thinking about this question, and after 30 years of being some type of enforcement officer, um, I knew needed a different direction. Uh, I'd chosen to work for the court and to work in the various capacities that I worked in, so I enjoyed my work. But when it was time for retirement, and I started thinking about the encore career, that was the big thing. What's your encore career? What are you going to do? And I started thinking about it. I mean, I could have very well gone further into the court or into criminal justice or into social work or something like that. But I needed a new direction. And I went to a yoga retreat at a place that I had been wanting to go to for almost 20 years, but I could never manage to get the logistics together, the traveling and, the cost of the retreat and everything is all the fees are a la carte. So you pay for whatever program you're going to take, and then you have to pay for housing, and then there was going to be travel, and it was just a lot to figure out, and I could never get it together. And finally, I was able to go, and I rediscovered yoga. I hadn't practiced in a while, and I had actually forgotten about practicing yoga and how much I enjoyed it. And it was like an aha moment. This is what I'm going to do. Now, I didn't know exactly how I was going to get it together, but this is what I'm going to do. I knew I had to do something that was going to be giving me some peace and would allow me to offer peace and comfort to others and maybe even some healing. And that's what yoga does, for me, yoga and mindful meditation. When I decided to teach, I had to have a name for my company. And I decided to call it the Traveling Yogi. And I decided to call it that because, I wanted to carry the yoga from place to place, person to person, for those people who may not have access to it or may not can come into, my studio. I didn't want them to be left out. And also because I had traveled all 7 continents, I thought, it kind of went together, the traveling yogi. I wanted to make my yoga mobile, you know. So that was one of the reasons that I chose that name. I teach hatha yoga, hatha and alignment-based yoga, generally in 1-hour segments. Hatha is one of over 100 types of yoga. It's a slow and gentle form of yoga that also focuses on the breath. There are other types that are more flow, more intense, more faster. But the slow and gentle served me. It allows me to hold those positions, those poses for a period of time and breathe into that pose and make sure that I and my students are well aligned and properly doing the pose. Mindful meditation is taught in 30-minute segments. And again, meditation has many, many types. Mindfulness is just one of those types. And mindfulness is just being in the moment, as opposed to focusing on, a beach scene or a vision of something in your head. You're focusing on your breath. And that's what mindful meditation is all about. I offer these services in my studio, which is in Philadelphia, of course, or I will offer them at a designation of their choosing. I'm also working on offering my services online. And once I get that together, I will be certain to let you know.
Oh, wonderful.
Thanks for asking.
All right. Well, great. Okay. So you've explained what it has done for your life, which I find absolutely amazing, because I just in the description, I can feel a sense of peacefulness that it brings. So would you say that it keeps you in a state of peacefulness in your daily living?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. But it should be noted that these are practices, and so you don't get it overnight.
Got it.
And most of it you can't get without a teacher. The Hindus call them gurus, and they call them gurus, which just means teacher. Somebody has to teach you how to do these things.
Got it.
And then once taught, you have to practice. You have to practice like you just cannot sit down and close your eyes and be quiet. I had heard of meditation before, probably around 1984. I was exposed to the concept of meditation, but hearing it and knowing how to pull it off is a whole nother thing. And even now, after so long, my mind still doesn't become completely clear, or I still have those random thoughts that run through my head, I just know I can recognize them quickly and pull myself back to my breath.
Absolutely.
But believe me, that takes practice.
So
That takes practice.
So in order
and the Vietnamese monk that whose practice I was first introduced to, Thich Nhat Hanh, he teaches that when you hear the sound of the bell, that you should stop on a dime, just like that. Stop on a dime. Well, who can do that?
Absolutely.
You know, with all this noise, in the atmosphere, you probably wouldn't even hear a bell. Exactly. You know, so it takes practice.
So getting to peace takes practice.
Mm.
That if you, I guess, with an intent on getting there, practice it daily, then you can have that. Okay, good stuff.
Absolutely.
Great. All right, so my next question, Candy. So, Candy, as you all know, we've been traumatized as a result of this pandemic. How do you think, based on your experience and your practicing, of mindful meditation, how can yoga and meditation help someone through this pandemic? And if you will, define for the listeners exactly, and you've already done that, you've kind of defined it, but if you can kind of bring it back out, define what exactly mindful meditation is in and through this pandemic, and how learning it can help us to navigate our anxieties during this time.
Well, the first thing I would say to you is breathe, breathe, breathe.
Got it.
So many of us are holding our breaths without even knowing it.
Okay.
and it sounds so simple to say breathe, you know, but if you think about being in a state of high anxiety, and you call someone, and you're just venting, you're upset, and and you're just talking, and the first thing I say is breathe.
Okay.
Just breathe, and that just kind of deflates the balloon.
Got it.
You know, it lets your shoulders relax. It's like exhaling. I'm thinking now about waiting to exhale. Just you just kind of decompress. You just kind of decompress. Just sit and breathe for a minute. Just sit and breathe. Sit and breathe. And then you have to learn to take long breaths. I mean, panting is breathing too, but we don't want to pant.
Got it.
You want to in 2, 3, 4, out 2, 3, 4, in 2, 3, 4, out 2, 3, 4. And so you can't be panicked and do that.
Got it.
It's going to tune you down immediately. Once you just start decompressing and sinking into your chair or into your seat and putting your hands down on your sides, and, uncross your legs and your ankles and start to breathe, you start to decompress, Now, as a practice, I would say you find a quiet place to do that. Maybe add some soft, non-jarring music, just some soft music in the background. Find a calming view. Like right now, I'm sitting in my front room, but I'm looking out at the trees and just watching the trees move back and forth with the blue sky in the background and some slither of cloud in there. Oh my God, it's so calming. It's so calming. And so getting your environment to uphold where you're trying to get to makes all the difference. So if you're in a panic state, then you're having an argument on the telephone, get off the call. Just detach. Let me call you back. Get off the call. Or even if you're talking to the person and you feel yourself getting worked up, get off the call, and go sit and decompress. If you can't sit down, if you're in the midst of something and you can't sit down and find the quiet place and all of that, just come back to your breath. Remember to breathe. You have to breathe. That makes all the difference. That makes all the difference.
Got it. And I know in even my personal life, when I become stressed or feel overwhelmed, I can remember one time that sticks out at me that switching my attention brought me to another place. I had walked outside I have a little rose garden, and I attentively focused on my rose garden, and I was able to see simple things like a butterfly that was flickering. And you're absolutely right that it switched my focus, if you will, to something that was outside of myself. I guess that's probably my next question. Is it is the mindfulness focusing your attention outside of yourself for a moment?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
It's mindfulness is about being in the moment.
In that moment. Okay.
Being in the moment. And so as I just described to you, I'm sitting in my chair in my front room. I have a computer. My computer screen is up. I'm looking out my window. I see the green treetops. They're waving back and forth. I see the blue light. All of that is being in the moment.
Got it.
Now, there's plenty of things going on.
Got it.
But I'm choosing to focus what I'm doing right now. And I'm on the telephone with you.
Got it.
I can hear you very clearly. We're having a conversation in the moment. In the moment.
So you're not...
and so I'll give you an example as well, in addition to this. I had mentioned to you about my daughter being in the hospital for the last 2 days. Now, and again, and here we are with the practice of this. Immediately wants to go to all sorts of things. What if, and suppose this, and suppose that. Come back, Candy. Come back. Where are you now? You're in the day. We don't know what the future has to bring. We're in today. She's okay. She's in the best possible place. You can't take care of her. You have everything you need right now. And let's work with this. And so that is mindfulness. So if you're at the sink and you're washing dishes, pay attention to washing your glass, how you're washing your glass, how you're holding your sponge or your dishcloth, how the water sounds. Is it too hot? Is it too cold? Are there bubbles? Is there enough bubbles? Or can you see the kind of bluish purpley tint that's in some bubbles as they turn around the dish liquid? That's mindfulness in the moment.
So staying focused on what is going on in that period, right where you are.
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly.
Right.
And if you happen to be in a traumatic state at that moment, then you can take your mind to your breath.
Got it.
Am I breathing? Am I panting? This is my in-breath. I know it's my in-breath. 2, 3, 4. This is my out-breath. I know it's my out-breath. This is my in-breath. I know it's my in-breath. This is my out-breath. I know it's my out-breath. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. And so you will immediately start to calm. It's going to be a battle in the midst, because we're fight or flight. I mean, that's what happens when we get anxious and, have that sense of urgency and we're ready to sprint. But once I begin to breathe, you see, the fight or flight begins to subside.
Got it.
And I can be still. I can be peaceful right where I am. I can disconnect from this situation and clear my head. The purpose of meditation has always been about clear thinking. It's just in recent years that there's been so much talk about, the medical aspects of it, the medical benefits, the psychological benefits. But when the gurus and the Hindus and the Buddhists and those people were practicing meditation, they weren't practicing it so much because it was good for their physical and mental body. They were doing it to be in an optimum mental state, to have clarity, to have focus. And that's exactly what you get.
Okay. Well, that makes absolute sense now. And as I was sitting here, I was doing, the moment, because I think with all that's going on in the world, it's so hard to stay in the moment because your head is going here and there and there and there,
right?
Because all of this that's going on. So it is so paramount that we kind of remove. Like, I don't allow myself to watch the news but one time a day. I only need that much to fill me up.
Very good.
Because if I do it
very
more
good.
than that, my brain is all over the place, and that's a bad place to be. So absolutely.
And your psyche,
yes, I can't do it. So I kind of try to focus. I get that little bit of news, I process it, and then I go back to my life. Of what my day to day is, and I know everybody's feeling that it. Again, as I said earlier, this is actually trauma to our country, and I think so desperately we need to get back to optimal to an optimal mental state, and that's the reason that I chose to bring you on, is to share that with some people that may be just overwhelmed with all that's going on. So that leads me to my next question, finally. Can you offer our listeners like 5 mindful, you've already given us a few, but 5 mindful meditation tips to help or soothe them when they are confronted with anxiety or panic?
Well, again, what I just said, breathe, breathe, breathe.
Got it.
We're holding our breath. When we're in a panic mode, we are holding our breath.
Got it.
So you have to breathe. So the first thing would be pay attention to my breath.
Got it.
So I'm panicked. I'm in a state of panic. Okay, now what? Now what? I mean, what am I going to do with that panic? Being able to think. Again, meditation ultimately is about clarity. Being able to think. Example. Some years ago, I had a car, and I was crossing an intersection. I had the light, and I proceeded into an intersection, and the guy ran the light and T-boned. Well, he didn't quite T-bone me. He hit the front left fender, I guess, of my car, and kept going. I took off chasing him. Now I'm riding. I'm ride behind him. He turned, I turned, he turned. And then a moment of sanity, Candy. And what are you going to do when you catch him? Oh, okay. Now let me just be still for a minute, and process that. What am I going to do when I catch this man? I don't know who's in that car. I don't know how big he is. But suppose he stops all of a sudden, gets out the car, and comes back. What am I going to do?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and so that's where the moment of sanity comes in.
Okay.
When I'm able to think clearly.
Got it.
Breathe.
Breathe.
Breathe. Breathe.
Okay.
The other thing is, and you said it very clearly, stop watching the news.
Mm-hmm.
Stop watching the news all day long. Once I've heard what's going on for today, I don't watch anything else. I don't need the day by day body counts. I don't need to know what's going on in the rest of the world with COVID. I even before COVID, I stopped watching the nightly news, like the first 15 minutes, when they're telling you who was killed and how many murders there have been. I don't need to know that.
Got it.
What do I need to know that for? Someone told me they have an app on their phone that alerts them whenever a crime is committed. Why?
Exactly.
What are you going to do with that information? And you're not a police officer. What are you going to do with that information except frighten yourself, frighten yourself, frighten yourself, which means hold my breath some more, hold my breath some more. So I have to be mindful of what I have in my environment. Nature is important to me. I need to see something live and vibrant and growing. Soft music, soft sounds, water fountains, birds. They have apps now that you can put on your phone so you can hear these things. There's soft music you can put on your phone so you can hear that just to calm yourself down. All of those, they're props. Use them. Use them. People use a lot of props to get through life. Sex, drugs, alcohol, shopping, just to name a few. You can use those props or you can find some new ones. I choose yoga and mindful meditation.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Miss Candy Slaughter. This has been so powerful, and I'm sure that it's going to help so many people out there, that are struggling to find a, a, a peaceful place, in this uncertain time in our world. So, guys, if you'd like to connect with Candy, you can reach her at 215 224 7530. And again, her company's name is The Traveling Yogi. I'm going to attach her business card to this podcast. And guys, thanks for joining me again for season 1, episode 4. And until the next episode, go forth and do amazing things. My warmest regards.